Where is the keyboard?
Yeah, good.
What did you have? You're welcome on Black Hotfire Network, Africa Maria from Kampala, Uganda, with my colleague. INNOSSETU, good evening. It's that I have minutes past 6 p.m. here, and today is the 8th of December. For those who are just, of course, seeing us today, you are welcome. Yet, our second episode of the day. For those who are with us in the morning, thank you guys for being with us throughout that time. And yes, today's topic is like Russia's prime interest in Africa. Like, why is Russia interested in Africa? Russia's history with colonialism differs from the Europe colonial model but includes periods of expansions and control over various territories. And of course, that Russia has had an historical involvement with colonialism. For example, Russia's expansion eastward and southward during the Tsarist period can be seen as a form of colonialism. So for people who keep on, of course, you know that Russia expanded southward during the Tsarist period, and it conquered the Siberia, Central Asia, and the Caucasus, involved in the subjugation of diverse ethnic groups. Russia has been doing colonialism indirectly. Russia has been involved in, of course, expanding its territory and its administrative hand to various countries. Now, Russia established colonies in North America, including Alaska, in the 18th century. However, in 1867, due to financial difficulties and the risk of losing Alaska in potential conflicts, Russia sold the territory to the United States. So apparently, Alaska was a territory that, of course, was a colony that belonged to Russia, but due to financial difficulties, Russia sold Alaska to, of course, United States. Russia also has been involved in the Central Asia. The colonization of Central Asia in the 19th century, known as the Great Game with the British Empire, involved the establishment of Russian control in territories such as Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan. Now, a lot of people usually say that we have not seen Russia involved in colonialism. Apparently, Russia may not be so much into Russia may not have a huge interest in colonizing Africa. That's for the Africans who, of course, are supporting Russia. But we've seen Russia in history trying to colonize some of the countries and the regions that I've mentioned. Now, Russia also colonized the Caucasian region. Russia's expansion into the Caucasian region involved conflicts with the Ottoman Empire and the Persia. It resulted in the annexation of terrorists like Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. So we have seen Russia involving, even during the Soviet period, while the Soviet Union did not engage in traditional colonialism, it exerted influence and control over Eastern European countries through the establishment of satellite states. The Soviet approach was ideological, aiming to spread communism rather than economic exploitation. But of course, a lot, even during the Central Asia Republic, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, the newly independent Central Asian Republic, e.g., Kazakhstan, emerged from the Soviet legacy but faced challenges in establishing their sovereignty. So apparently, most of those countries that were under sovereign uh, had a touch of Russia in their existence throughout the history. Now, Russia has shown us its interest in Africa, though most Africans claim that Russia is not interested in colonizing Africa or in controlling Africa. But Russia has the history of colonizing uh, countries. Russia, for example, the countries that have been, of course, mentioning to you. We've had the Wagner machineries down in Africa who have actually had a lot to involve within the Africa's, um, you know, Africa's politics. So, of course, as of we know that wait a little, you'll get up.
Whenever we see countries, Western countries, showing interest in Africa, we think about imperialism and neo-colonialism. So, um, the overall Russia's military presence in Africa focused actually at first on strengthening both official and unofficial channels of defense security cooperation with different African states. It has proved to be the cost-effective way to gain considerable political economic leverage on the continent of Africa. We know that first, um, Russia it wanted a lasting presence on African continent, including ports facilities, the Indian Ocean. It wants to gain a voice of African affairs, and primarily by supporting local communist parties and providing economic and military aid to the governments. We see very many African governments being supported militarily by Russia. Even in Uganda, we see that. We see it recently with Burkina Faso. Um, soldiers in Burkina Faso, they are being taught military by the Russian army. We are seeing Russian troops in currently in Burkina Faso, sorry. But this implies that this implies imperialism. Implies um, colonialism. Oh, whatever word it may be. But we know very well what are the effects of colonialism in African country, because colonialism is associated with problems like resource depletion. These people, whenever they stay in Africa, their target is on resources.
Mm,
We know that these people want free labor from
mm,
Africa,
mm,
labor exploitation. Whenever we see such people, you will know the people that are in mines in Burkina Faso the resources that are in Burkina Faso. These African people who are exploited. These are African people that are working for low pay. These African people that are not even given out pay. So we know those are effects of imperialism in African countries. Unfair
mm,
taxation, lack of industrialization, because there is no way these countries are going to promote industrialization, because even the the resources, even the minerals they fetch from African countries, they are taken outside Africa for refining. So there
mm,
is no way these people are going to develop any of African country, let it
mm,
be Russia. So they take these resources out, they are not refined within the country, so they can't build an industry related to that. So
mm,
uh, we also have, whenever we see imperialism in African countries, we think about dependence on cash crop economy,
mm,
because of course we have to depend on them. These Western countries, a case in point, Russia. We're talking about Russia. The topic is Russia. These are countries that bring the propaganda of cash crop growing, being the most unable form of farming, being the most easy form of farming, but neglecting African people, neglecting the traditional way of growing crops, food crops that can fight food security, because of course cash crops, they are not eaten for food. These are cash crops, they are for money, like it's the word is, they're for money. So when we see any form of imperialism, that's what we think about. We think about prohibition of trade, the
mm,
breaking up of traditional African society and values, the lack of political development. You
mm,
can never see political development whenever we see imperialism.
mm,
Russia is not the first country to announce a stay in Africa, to
mm,
issue interest, willingness in African country. We see very many countries are showing interest in African countries, but what are the outcomes of this stay? Just know, I'll give Burkina Faso as an example because it is the immediate country that has just recently collaborated with Russia directly. This is what we expect from those countries. The breaking up of traditional African society and values. We are going to see very many people are in Burkina Faso being taught Russian language in the
mm,
schools. We shall even see Russian teachers teaching in Burkina Faso shortly. We are going to see Russian style of living, Russian culture of living, seeing it in Burkina Faso. And however much they promise to protect the president of Burkina Faso, but we expect lack of political development. The country is not going to develop politically.
mm,
We are going to see, we are still seeing very many wars, very
mm,
many civil wars within Burkina Faso, because this is what the Bazongos do. Whenever they see, you have seen Russia collaborating with the very many African countries, providing them with weapons for what?
mm.
To fight each other as Africans, not to fight the Bazungus because they know they are the superpowers. Hmm? Okay. Hmm. Sobola okwogerako.
Of course, Russia's involvement in Africa, particularly through entities like the Wagner Group, has raised various concerns and criticism. Some of the, of course, we know that most of this, we have seen the Wagner Group of the Wagner Group, the Russian Wagner Group, actually involving in very many African countries. We've seen this in Sudan. We've seen the Wagner Group in Libya. We've seen it in the Central African Republic. The Wagner Group has been reported to be involved in Libya, providing military support to functions aligned with the Libyan National Army led by General Khalifa Haftar. What Russia has involved a lot in the Africa's military system. Though we are also seeing the same issue in Sudan, we are seeing the same issue in Central Republic, but we know that Wagner Group is a private military company with the ties to Russia, and its involvement in Africa has been a subject of controversy and concern. Now, Wagner usually claims that it has come in Africa to keep peace because, of course, we know it is not under the United Nations forces, but it comes as a private military group to keep peace. But usually, in some cases, the Wagner Group has been associated with protecting Russian business interests, especially in regions rich in natural resources. This could involve securing mining or energy facilities. Uh, the Wagner Group is always around the resources, and they claim that they are protecting the resources. But we know they are protecting Russian business interests because we know that Russia, for a very long time, has involved in Africa's mineral resources. We all know that Russia is involving in Africa because of strategic influence. The Wagner Group involvement can be seen as part of Russia's broader strategy to expand its influence in Africa. By having a presence on the ground, Russia can potentially shape political outcomes and gain strategic advantages. We've seen this throughout the coups that have been happening, where we've seen people who have, of course, where after the instances of governments being overthrown, we are seeing African citizens flying the flags of Ghana um, upon the winning or of course taking over through this course. They are flying Russians flag and flying down, of course, putting down the flags of their colonial masters, which of course significantly shows that Russia is having an influence, a potential political influence that it has gained in Africa. Russia has also aimed at supporting the authoritarian regimes. The Wagner Group, by the way, we cannot discuss about Russia without mentioning the Wagner Group because it is their military group that is right now seen all over Africa. All right, so the Wagner Group has been linked to providing support to governments that align with Russia's interests. Even if these governments face international criticism, the support may involve military training, security services, or direct military assistance. You are saying that Russia is involved in the Uganda's military. So apparently, the current government of Uganda and Russia have a strong bond, but of course, probably that's the reason why there is a lot of involvement within this. And then Russia is aiming at geopolitical competition. These are the reasons why Russia is choosing Africa more than any other nation. Russia may perceive Africa as a region where geopolitical competition with other global powers, particularly Western nations, is taking place. In such a context, the Wagner Group's involvement could be a part of the Russia's effort to counterbalance the influence of other factors. Of course, when we saw Russia involving in Africa's politics, just like China, we saw reactions and controversies throughout, and the world, like why is Russia involved in Africa's politics? Why does Russia want to take over and stuff like that? But of course, this is geopolitical competition. So, as we Africans, we are on that table. It's like everybody wants to have a piece of us. Anyway, um, so there are a lot of we have had this Wagner come into Africa, and of course, exercising on the behalf of Russia. Now we know that Russia interest in Africa is, of course, influenced by very, very many factors: economic opportunities, arms sales and military cooperation, political influences, counterbalancing Western influence, energy and infrastructure projects, exploring of new markets, support for United Nations initiatives, and many more. So apparently, Africa is the hot cake that everyone would wish to have on their table. We know that Africa is home to vast natural resources, and Russia seeks economic opportunities in sectors such as energy, mining, and agriculture. The cooperation in these areas can benefit Russia's economy and contribute to its resource security. We know that for a very long time, Africa's mineral resources has sold Africa to the world and has put it to the top as the number one country that everyone is demanding and is wishing to, of course, exercise their power, because the moment, of course, they do that in Africa, they know that it comes with a very huge benefit on the expense of the Africans um, prospering and, of course, economically developing. Russia, we know that has historically been a major supplier of arms to African nations. And we have seen countries like Uganda, where they, of course, purchase most of their military arms, of course, and their cooperation, working together with the Russia uh, to, of course, train their, forces and different opportunities that Russia has rendered uh, to establish geopolitical influences in different African regions. We know that by engaging with African nations, Russia aims to strengthen its diplomatic ties and increase its influence on the global stage. Now, this involves participating in international forums, securing support for its positions, and building alliances, which, of course, Russia has done. And Russia perceives Africa as a region where it can counterbalance the influence of Western nations by fostering relationships with African countries. Russia seeks to diversify geopolitical alignments and reduce Western dominance. We know this is a competition. Russia, the US, and other countries have been competing. They try to, they want to show the world how powerful they are. And I believe that Russia thinks that the only way it can show this is its involvement in Africa's politics, and of course having a touch of Africa. Now, we also know very well that Russia is interested in participating in the energy and infrastructure projects in Africa. This includes investment in the development of oil and gas fields, construction of power plants, and improvement to transportation networks. We know everyone comes with a claim. There is no one who just enters Africa without claiming that they got Africa's back. We are here to help. You should inquire located Africa.
Since 2014, Russia's involvement in Africa has grown significantly. Africa, African leaders have been respective receptive to these overtures as a result of increasing concerns about growing Chinese dominance, retrenchment of the United States, and their interest in diversifying trade and security partners. Russia cultivates these relationships by relying on the legacy of the Soviet Union's support for anti-colonial and liberation movements and focuses on strengthening diplomatic, military, and economic collaborations. We know that the overall Russia's strategy in Africa appears to involve in a mix of armed sales, like you said, political support to dictatorship rulers or leaders in African countries, and security collaborations in exchange for mining rights. Most people they are not aware that Africa does mining in Africa. Abantu abamu tebakirowooza. But business opportunities and diplomatic support for Russia's foreign policy preferences. The offers of military assistance and political support, especially for dictators, have opened doors to the Russian firms and strengthened the diplomatic relations. The support of African allies has been especially important to Russia at the United Nations, where African countries account for a quarter of all votes in General Assembly. We know that Russia trade and investment in Africa has grown significantly, particularly in North Africa, yet Russia remains a minor economic player on the continent in comparison to China, India, or the US. Russia's support for smaller states, especially those that have been internationally shown, gives Moscow significant influence in these African countries. We know that in 2019, Russia had concluded military cooperation agreements with 21 African countries and is negotiating the establishment of military bases in a number of the African states. It is also providing counterterrorism trainings. Russia is currently the largest supplier of arms to Africa.
Mm.
So Russia is increasing efforts to influence elections in African countries. So its strategy focuses on shoring up our dictators in unstable yet resource-rich states. Thus, contrast to popular opinion on the continent, which favors democracy. So, Russia remains a relevant minor economic and political player on the continent, and the European Union and the US concerns that Russia's expansion in Africa draws the continent into broader geopolitical struggle between the great powers.
Mm.
Again.
Mm.
So there are very many African countries that are supported by Russia, politically, economically, but Russia, like I said, in African countries, it focuses too much on arms, on firearms,
Mm.
on latest firearms, because these other countries, these other former colonial masters, for them they are focusing so much on trade. They're focusing so much on selling out cultures. They're focusing so much on selling out ideologies, their ideologies to African countries.
Mm.
But Russia focuses so much on arms, on selling out arms to African countries. Therefore, we have different African countries that are dealing with where Russia it is showing interest. Um, we know that um,
So these are that we have Russia. We have Russia and forum that was of course started by the Ugandan Russian government. It's a joint forum where, of course, these two join to share different ideologies. We have had the Uganda military officers move to Russia for training. We've had Russia send their military people to come here and train Ugandans on counter-terrorism. We've had even Russia giving out munitions on loan to Uganda, apparently. And, with the Russia, like I said, Russia is China does. Russia goes with who is embracing him. So it's not so much involved in bodyguard. But when they removed the dude, they were in a group and crossing and it did. So boy, you don't tell them bagenda na bagenda.
so we see Russia, we see over 40 countries in African, on the continent, African continent, signing military agreements with Russia.
Mm.
So what does this imply? Because we know very well that the people that control power in Africa, those are people that have military support. Those are people that have security and are politically stable. Um, Russia, for Russia, for
There's any military.
huh?
There's any military.
Military agreement over 40 African countries.
You know that, of course, these African countries that are signing military agreements or purchasing military equipment from Russia, uh, of course, to mention, but okay, we got Russia, sorry, Algeria, Egypt, Sudan, and others that are involving in this. But they have a reasons why they are signing the military agreement with Russia. And this can vary, but of course, diversification of suppliers. African countries may seek to diversify their resources of military equipment, reducing dependency on a single supplier. Engaging with Russia provides an alternative to Western or other suppliers. We know that, by the way, Russia has even been able to give these ammunitions or this military equipment on loan. So you just come and say what you want to, which guns, which military equipments you want from, Russia, and Russia will give you at a loan. Now, these are things that other Western countries have not been doing. And some African nations have historical ties with Russia, dating back to the Cold War era, when the Soviet Union maintained diplomatic relationship and provided military support to various African countries. So this is not the first time actually that Russia is involving in the Africa. It has been involving in Africa since the Cold War era. And of course, Russian military equipment is often seen as cost effective compared to alternatives, making it an attractive option for countries with budget constraints. Like I said, With the Russia, yet it doesn't. Russian government don't care about cash. They are aiming at creating that relationship, that friendship. So whether you have money or not, you are able to get the military equipments that you want from Russia, if at all you comply. And usually, people are getting this military equipment at at a loan, and they are paying them back with the minerals. That's why we have the Wagner Group down in Africa, guarding the mineral resources and stuff like that. Now, countries may align with Russia for geopolitical and strategic reasons, seeking support on international issues or forming partnership based on shared political objectives. I'll give you the example of Uganda during the days of the campaigns, where, of course, the US was in support of Bobi Wine, and Russia and China made it clear that for them they are in support of the current president of Uganda. As US was trying to threaten Uganda that it's going to start a war in Uganda, Russia said you cannot do that. If you do it, we have you. So most of these African countries are looking for strong friends. They are looking for relationships. They are looking for strong friendship. Of course, they know they need to lean on somebody, so they end up going to some, you know, other superpower countries. And then when you look at the Russian military equipment and solutions, of course, from aircrafts to air defenses system and naval vessels, which of course that some other countries are not willing to sell to Africa. Of course, we know not every Western country is willing and ready to sell certain weapons to Africa. There are some weapons that these countries do not wish to sell to Africa. And usually, no matter how much money Africans have, there are some weapons that the Western countries do not wish to sell to Africa and refuse to sell. So Russia says, okay, if they do not want, you can come over to Russia. We are willing and ready to sell you all those equipments. Now, the Russians' involvement uh, in Africa is a game of that strong bond and friendship. So apparently, most people think that it is a good thing for Russia to be part of Africa. Uh, they are claiming that the Americans and the Europeans and whoever has had involvement in Africa, it is high time they step down because they have apparently have their time. So it is okay for Russia to also have a piece of Africa. Now, these are Africans are claiming. So, well, it's crazy when people are very desperate. This is what usually happens. So, as much as Russia may not be the best option for Africa, the only best option for Africa is Africa standing together as one and creating this relationship and bond among one another rather than another foreign country like Russia. They don't know how to surrender.
Ennyo.
Sorry, that is how I believe.
Ate ki kitugambye? Eh?
Ndaba obwongo bwaffe tebuli mu kutegeera bulungi.
Tugigale.
Koleke werekemu.
Banno bagenze.
How do you know?
Tebabayo tebakoze. Tebanalabikako. Ffe abasembye kolera ffe abaliko.
Bagende.
Ate leero 8.
Babadde balina kgenda leero. Kyobala ne mukama wo taliiwo. Taliiwo.
Waali obwedda y'oyajjanga ddayo nze nkimanyi.
Okakasa. Mazima ani agenda oba bagenda. Nze kamulinde nga yeesama mbu yakawa ssente.
Oyo oyo eh nani oyo wow jana baye boogera nga balugwana wow
Ansobedde nange.
nabanga Omufiripayini
Si Mufiripayini. Ayinza okuba Mugirimaani.
Mufiripayini
Si Mufiripayini.
n'Abafiripayini baavu kitegeera
Tamanyi.
currently people have interest in Uganda, actually not even in Uganda, in all African countries.
Tamanyi kuyimba.
Setukula tuli mu maaso go.
Mbwera Yesu. Nkugamba Mugirimaani. Ekigambo Yesu.
Ate Abajamani balina nnyo connection n'Abannayuganda. Oyinza obutakikkiriza. There are a lot of there are a lot of Ugandan students studying in Germany. A lot of them, and ate omanyi Abannayuganda. There are a lot of Ugandan students in Germany studying German. Oyinza n'okwekanga currently Germany is taking out very many students from those schools. A lot of them, they're giving them bursaries. I even have a friend. I was with him in high school. He wanted to be a father. We used to call him father. Currently, that guy was doing the same. I thought he's going to be a doctor because, of course, ewaabwe badokita ate ewaabwe bonna bonna it is ewaabwe bonna bonna bapriest. Even his elder brother is a priest naye alina omukazi n'abaana alina ennyumba eri niya nga we tubeera
Nawe singa era wayingira Kristo wambuzadde.
N'aliruddewo okuzaala ate by the way singa kati n'atera okumala
Wandiddewo okuzaala oti.
n'aliruddewo ati nga sinamanya matrix ekintu ankyalina fear naye ate n'alibadde endya
Kati okulya ekitegeeza oba ozaala.
Okulya it doesn't mean kuzaala kyokka bonna be nalindidde balinamu abaana.
Kati okimanyi nti obukatoliki tebukkiririza mukwano wandibadde nayivu tewandijambaye.
Siyinza nze bayinza obwongo bwange nsigala nabo naawe toyinza kunteekamu ideology gye ssaagala however much ekintu mbaki tolaba nti no nze nali njagala ngenda kuyingira ebintu ebyo naye I don't believe nti byali binzija kuba enjagala kuba nali ngenda first of all nali ngenda kulya abasisita naye ngaali embeera eyo because they do these things. Since I grew up knowing they were guy tebanywa na mwenge. They don't eat. I thought they don't eat. The first time I saw priests taking alcohol, I was surprised. I thought they don't take alcohol, they don't take pork. Maybe they were champion in that. I thought they don't take. I thought they are so They are so holy, they are so godly, they don't do those things.
nze
Naye omwenge wogunywera bw'oti omwenge gutuma. One,
anti olaba kati abamu babatta waliwo abakusa abamu bafa n'obutwa bakuba ebintu
obutwate
ebikyakiti
obulwadde.
obulwadde buleke bali ne babawa n'obutwa mu mwenge nga basussizza obwenzi ku bakazi b'abandi. Nze nze ate waliwo awo kristo yali museera semaga yali mutubwa semaga yalina emyaka oba yalinga Masaka bali bakamuleeta bakamutikkira
Singa nange mmala
nga bakamutikira kati neŋŋendayo baagabanga aid like nga bw'ogenda biki nga bakuwa bursaries mu masomero ag'enjawulo. Yalingawo omuwala eyabeeranga awo ku laptop mu nju yo yokka nga tavaamu ate wojja ng'alina engeri gy'akutunuzaamu obusungu ne ŋŋamba wano waliwo ekitali kituufu naye ng'olekayo ayagala atya Samantha nti Samantha bamuyita Lucia nagamuntu Lucia nange ono omwana aliko yiiro ono omwana alina kubeera nga muto bw'ati kati ne twekisinga contact nga nkubira olumu balina abantu be yandirectingako nende bamuwa ebbasala nagenda olaba nga biwanvu ne ŋŋamba kiki kye natuuka ne baŋŋamba ŋŋende oba bampaddeko connection ndowooza manyi buli omu ekintu kye nalaba mu bakyali abo buli omu abaagala kubeera muliri kati kyokka balunye nti bantu baagala naye naŋŋamba nti kakati olaba nze bakandeeta just about him nagamba muno bakandeeta naye mpaamu time I even lost contact nalabanga ebintu bitandise obwanvu ebyabo bakyali sibamuzanya naye ng'olwo anti mama akajja kule gwabonereza mbuli ye talina musaala bwegwajja ogenda mu muliro
nze olevo yange yonna nasomera ku basale because nali mugezi abamaki nti nali mulalo nze nali mugezi and so I told you about this natandikira ku because mama byali bimuleeze natandikira ku quarter basale mu senior 1 senior 2 ne banteeka ku senior 3 ne banteeka ku basale. So those people told me ambeerayo naye mmanyi matrix zaabwe n'emipiira gyabwe gyonna gye bagoba I know all their stuff their manyanga for me nze I knew those people don't take alcohol, those people don't take alcohol. That's what I knew about them because the way they talk about cocoa, the way they address alcohol kibeera kya buli azaamanyo nze I used to see them
bo tebagaanangako wakati kitebuganda mugolaba gwe gubeera ne mu hostia
naye engeri gye bagwadressinga towards people lwaki tebagamba omungi bakuba mwenge gwonna
omwenge omungi
nze waliwo nze I spent most of my time most of the 4 years when I was studying olive nga nzisiteyinga ku ssomero sidda waka kino nakigamba I used not to go back home nambeera eyo ku ssomero naye nalaba amanyanga gesitasobola nakuyisa ku mpewo I saw a lot even the money, even the money they get, it is for church. The money they get, it is for church. It is not for their soul. That's why most of them, they hide out their wealth status and the
Mm.
assets. They put them in names of other people. Ukitegeera
Mm.
nenga is so a lord
Amen.
yamukwana
Mbuno ki?
do you have sound?
Yeah. We have sound. Kanene akanyambo kaali kafaagana.
Nabuvamu
Ndowooza yankwama nali mu seminary school. Ng'omuntu
yabuvamu
antaddeko omuliro nagamba naye gwe oli kidnap.
wangi
I think it's like maybe he's still going.
ngarudo posting 2021.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, yeah, we have sound right over now.
Kala was going Sanchez Kakindo. Kala was going. Have you guys been talking without sound?
Yeah, we've been talking with the sound. We were just talking some sensitive stuff, so we had to mute a little bit. We have been talking with the sound. Since we came, we were talking with the sound. We just deliberately muted that. Ate tugenda vaawo teweereeta tugenda
Okay, 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 okay.
tukukolera ekimuleka atazaaza.
Zekukola. So, so those people, they started actually for me, I gave up because of very many things towards that. I gave up because of very many things. Because I saw that those people, they weren't holy, they are just pretenders. They're just selling out their ideologies to people just to make people blind, like or what Keith already said, that mind control. Where are you guys at?
We are at my home. We are seated outside at the balcony of my house.
By the way, if we can, the reason why we have very many dictators in Africa, it is because of Russia and China. I
Mm.
just guess because these are the people that are going to help you. The people that are these are the guys that are going to deal with you, and they're not going to bring strings attached.
Mm.
They're not going to tell you how are you ruling your country. They're not going to tell you they're not going to teach you how to rule your country as long as you give them what they want. They're not
Mm.
going to introduce things that very many people don't like the Messiah, like the gays,
Mm.
LGBTQ. The Chinese and the Russians, they won't do that. Era tojja balabamu ezo scandal.
Mm.
For them, they focus on one thing. We bakutte tebata.
Kituufu, kituufu.
You guys are
Era
always
kankufuuyire.
you guys are always someplace different. China wants Africa settled. Kabeerewo kangwa yogerako ne Bill. Nze kumufuubirako.
Aha. That's good. Got to go. Bring your ass back. What is it? Yeah, stop doing that. Let me alone. Let me alone, settle. Leave me alone. Nene awe choka. Lebu dange tokisusa. Hmm. namusajja gwe teweewuunya bakugamba ne gomenti nga siina nayo byenjogera n'oli muzaamu.
Russia doesn't need Africa. Kino kyonnyonnyoleko mukwano nze sibitegeera. Kinnyonnyoleko mulage
mbuno
naawe.
ki Russia doesn't need Africa tugenda kuyakulako eki. By the way, we are always missing Keith in the morning. I think he's always sleeping. I think he's always sleeping when we come in the morning. Omulabe face naye tegira. Joseph. Russia doesn't need Africa. Russia is interested in Africa. Keith, whether you like it or not, I don't know why you are saying Russia doesn't need Africa. Russia is interested in Africa because if it did not need Africa, it would not involve itself in Africa's, of course, mineral mining. It wouldn't, of course, involve itself in selling its military weapons in Africa. Russia is involving and it has interest. It has much interest in Africa because, of course, we have seen Russia working together with the China, and China is not alone in whatever it is doing in Africa. It is laying its accomplishment together. Its accomplishments, and it's of course backed up by China. China is backed up by Russia. So Russia has shown interest in Africa. That one is non-deniable. Russia may be interested to make sure Africa doesn't belong to the West, to collapse the West. Most of these superpower countries need the biggest reason they're involving in Africa is geopolitical. There is that big interest. First of all, Russia throughout history, even during the Cold War, Russia had its involvement in Africa. And we saw Russia militarily supporting African countries. Secondly, Russia has also showed its interest in Africa, in supporting Africa against the Western world. China is a puppet state of the Jews. It's not backed up by Russia. Well, China, you can still go and research about this. China has been a good, has a good relationship of mineral, of course, exchange with Korea, and also China for some time has involved in sending labor to, of course, Russia. So China and Russia have had that mutual friendship, that mutual relationship. We have not had, particularly in Uganda, I will say this, the existence of Jewish in Uganda has been so independent that I have not seen touches of actually Russians, unless if they are doing it beneath people's knowledge. But wali olabyeko abajju nga bakwatagana n'abarussia one, sorry, n'abachina one, and yet we have one of the biggest temple. We have one of the biggest Jewish temple mu Africa yonna.
Kino kyayogedde ndi naye. That Russia may be interested to make sure that Africa doesn't belong to the West. Because like China, Russia, it is having that legacy of some of the ideologies of the Soviet Union that it fights colonialism in African countries. Okitegeera?
mm.
Yeereetawo kiremesa that you must
So,
not be in Africa, like
mm,
other superpowers must not be in Africa. So it comes as a block to block these other powers from staying in Africa. Yeah, that is true. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Zona wazisomye.
yes,
China, China is a puppet state of Jews, not backed up by Russia. Ah, because they were trying to push Africa against the West. Kituufu kino, yes, this is true. This is true. This is true. China was created by the fake Jews that's how they became a power, right? Because of the Rothschild and the Rockefeller building China into power. China came into power. Okitegeera yogerako
mm.
era kanteera obudde bwaweddeyo zikiza ettaala bandizikiza ngaoyogera kansooke nakujjako lya waggulu ba so that tukula bulungi.
Gizikiza gijeeyo neno yawa sobola ozikiza kiri mm? Zonna njo ngenda lindako Keith agambye the same fake Jews that owned the Central Bank of Uganda created China into the Chinese.